The fusion of Islam and African tribal traditions. Africa, a continent rich in cultural diversity and historical depth, has long been a melting pot of traditions, beliefs, and practices. Among the most profound influences on African societies has been the arrival and integration of Islam, a religion that has woven itself into the fabric of countless tribal communities over centuries. The interplay between Islam and African tribal traditions is not merely a story of religious conversion, but a complex, dynamic process of cultural exchange, adaptation, and coexistence. This fusion has given rise to unique syncretic practices where Islamic teachings and indigenous customs have blended seamlessly, creating a vibrant tapestry of faith and tradition. From the bustling markets of Timbuktu to the serene villages of Zanzibar, the echoes of this intermingling are evident in art, architecture, music, and daily life. The spread of Islam in Africa was not a monolithic process. It varied widely across regions, influenced by trade routes, Sufi mysticism, and the resilience of tribal identities. This article delves into the intricate relationship between Islam and African tribal traditions, exploring how these two worlds have shaped each other and continue to coexist in a harmonious yet complex dance. Historical context. The arrival of Islam in Africa. The early spread of Islam in Africa began in the 7th century, primarily through trade routes connecting North Africa to sub-Saharan regions. Arab traders and scholars introduced Islam to African tribal communities, often blending religious teachings with local customs to facilitate acceptance. The trans-Saharan trade routes played a pivotal role, bringing not only goods, but also Islamic ideas and practices to West Africa. By the 11th century, Islam had gained a strong foothold in empires such as Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, where rulers like Mansa Musa of Mali became iconic figures of Islamic devotion. In East Africa, the Swahili coast became a hub of Islamic influence, with cities like Kilwa and Zanzibar serving as centers of trade and religious learning. The peaceful nature of Islam's spread, often through commerce and intermarriage, allowed it to integrate with existing tribal traditions rather than replace them. This historical context laid the foundation for the deep intermingling of Islam and African tribal cultures that continues to this day. Syncretism, blending Islamic and tribal practices. Syncretism, the blending of different religious and cultural practices, is a hallmark of Islam's integration into African tribal societies. Islamic rituals were often adapted to fit local customs, creating unique hybrid traditions that resonated with tribal communities. For example, naming ceremonies in many African tribes incorporated Islamic prayers and Quranic recitations, while retaining traditional elements like drumming and dancing. Marriage rites also reflected this fusion, with Islamic nikah ceremonies being combined with tribal rituals such as dowry exchanges and communal feasts. In some communities, Islamic festivals like Eid al-Fitr were celebrated alongside traditional harvest festivals, creating a shared sense of spirituality and community. The Nawa of Morocco and the Hausa of Nigeria are notable examples of groups that have seamlessly blended Islamic and tribal practices. Gnawa music, for instance, incorporates Islamic Sufi chants with African rhythms, creating a unique spiritual and cultural expression. This syncretism has allowed Islam to thrive in Africa while preserving the richness of tribal traditions. The role of Sufism in bridging tradition. Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam, played a crucial role in bridging Islamic teachings with African tribal spirituality. Sufi brotherhoods, such as the Qadiriyya and Tijaniya, emphasized personal devotion and spiritual connection, which resonated deeply with African tribal values. Sufi saints, or walis, were often seen as intermediaries between the divine and the human, a concept that aligned with traditional African beliefs in ancestral spirits. The use of local languages and symbols in Sufi teachings made Islam more accessible and relatable to tribal communities. Sufi shrines became centers of cultural and religious activity, attracting followers from diverse backgrounds and fostering a sense of unity. In West Africa, the Mouride Brotherhood in Senegal exemplifies the fusion of Sufi Islam with tribal traditions, emphasizing hard work and community service. Sufism's emphasis on tolerance and inclusivity allowed it to coexist harmoniously with indigenous practices, making it a powerful force in the spread of Islam across Africa. Cultural expressions, art, architecture, and literature. The fusion of Islam and African tribal traditions is vividly expressed in art, architecture, and literature. Islamic motifs, such as geometric patterns and calligraphy, were incorporated into traditional African art forms, creating a unique aesthetic. In architecture, mosques were often built using local materials and designs, blending Islamic features with tribal elements. The Great Mosque of Djenné in Mali is a prime example, with its mud brick construction and distinctive minarets reflecting both Islamic and African influences. Swahili literature, written in Arabic script, emerged as a rich literary tradition that combined Islamic themes with African storytelling. The Epic of Liongo, a Swahili hero, is a testament to this cultural synthesis, blending Islamic values with African folklore. Calligraphy and Quranic inscriptions became integral to African art, adorning everything from textiles to pottery. These cultural expressions not only preserved tribal traditions, but also enriched Islamic practices, creating a shared heritage that continues to inspire. Gender roles and social structures. The integration of Islam into African tribal societies had a profound impact on gender roles and social structures. While Islam introduced patriarchal norms, many African tribes maintained matrilineal traditions, leading to a complex interplay of gender dynamics. In some communities, women played key roles as spiritual leaders, healers, and custodians of tribal customs, even as Islamic practices gained prominence. The practice of purdah, or seclusion of women, was adapted to fit local contexts, often coexisting with traditional gender roles. In West Africa, the influence of Sufi brotherhoods provided women with opportunities for spiritual leadership and community involvement. The Hausa Fulani women of Nigeria, for example, have historically balanced Islamic piety with active participation in trade and social life. This blending of Islamic and tribal gender norms created a unique social fabric that continues to evolve in contemporary African societies. Resistance and adaptation. The colonial era. The colonial era brought new challenges to the relationship between Islam and African tribal traditions. European colonizers often sought to undermine both Islamic and indigenous practices, viewing them as obstacles to their control. In response, many African tribes used Islam as a tool of resistance, uniting against colonial oppression. Islamic education systems, such as the madrasas, were adapted to preserve tribal identity and resist cultural assimilation. Reformist movements, like the Mahdist Uprising in Sudan, sought to purify Islam from colonial influences while retaining its core teachings. At the same time, some tribes embraced Islamic reformism as a way to modernize and strengthen their communities. This period of resistance and adaptation highlighted the resilience of both Islamic and tribal traditions in the face of external pressures. Modern-day dynamics, challenges, and continuities. In contemporary Africa, the relationship between Islam and tribal traditions continues to evolve, shaped by globalization and modernization. Tensions sometimes arise between Islamic orthodoxy and tribal customs, particularly in urban areas where religious reform movements gain traction. However, many communities continue to thrive through the fusion of Islam and tribal traditions, finding strength in their shared heritage. In rural areas, traditional practices like ancestor veneration and communal rituals coexist with Islamic prayers and festivals. The rise of digital media has also created new opportunities for sharing and preserving this cultural synthesis. From social media platforms to online forums, Africans are celebrating their unique blend of Islamic and tribal identities. This dynamic interplay ensures that the legacy of Islam and African tribal traditions remains alive and relevant in the modern world. Conclusion: a living legacy of unity and diversity. The intermingling of Islam and African tribal traditions is a testament to the resilience and adaptability of human cultures. It is a story of how faith and tradition can coexist, enrich one another, and create something entirely new. This fusion has not only shaped the spiritual landscape of Africa, but also its social, cultural, and political fabric. As we look to the future, the relationship between Islam and African tribal traditions continues to evolve, facing new challenges and opportunities. Yet at its core, it remains a powerful example of how diversity can be a source of strength rather than division. By understanding and celebrating this unique heritage, we honor the countless individuals and communities who have contributed to this living legacy. The month of fasting. But did you know not everyone is required to fast? Some individuals receive divine exemptions out of mercy, wisdom, and necessity. A traveler crossing vast distances is granted a divine exception. Fasting can wait, but the journey must continue. Mothers nurturing life are given relief. Islam honors their strength by allowing nourishment instead of fasting. Age brings wisdom, but also frailty. For those too weak to fast, compassion replaces obligation. When health is at risk, fasting is not required. Islam prioritizes well-being over hardship. A natural cycle does not disrupt devotion. Women are excused with the opportunity to make up their fasts later. For those whose work demands extreme physical effort, fasting can be postponed or replaced by feeding the needy. Before responsibility comes learning, children are not required to fast, but are encouraged to understand its meaning. Ramadan is about devotion, not hardship. Islam's wisdom ensures that those in need are given ease, proving that faith is built on balance, mercy, and understanding.